But one thing that I've noticed with the word viable is even in small startups like the CEO or the founder, she has a completely different understanding what viable is compared to what you're trying to build.
One of the components to improve, and then you target 1,000 users, new interface with the old component. Other 1,000 users, new interface with the new component, and then you compare the results.
Hello and welcome. This is Product Chronicles, the Brazilian way, and we decided to change a little bit our way of working. We were focusing only on talking to Brazilians and understanding how Brazilians build product. And our last episode, we had Paulo Caroli, and the conversation was so good that we decided to make Paulo Caroli a permanent co-host here. So welcome, Paulo.
Hey, thanks, Joca. A pleasure to be here.
And we have Fabio also with us, our co-host Fabio Duarte.
Hello, how are you doing? It's great to be here.
Yeah, and so we decided to pick some topics, some interesting topics for us to discuss, to see how we've been approaching this topic with our clients. And the first one is a very interesting one because Fabio and Paulo they are building a new product on top of that, and so the topic is MVP, and I will start asking us. What is the definition of MVP?
Joca, I'm laughing here because recently you shared a post saying it's MSP, not MVP, minimal sellable product. Let's get
That-
started with this conversation.
that's right. That's right. That's because of the
Yeah,
viable term. Yeah.
what
But
viable
but but,
means, right?
but go on. Your definition of MVP.
Well, let's start from the beginning. MVP, short for minimal viable product in the tech industry, right? MVP, most valuable player for basketball fans, was there before, but we got the same acronym for something else. From my understanding, I wrote the book Linkception, and a central point of Linkception is the group align about the vision and then how to get started, the concept of MVP. When I was writing the book, I researched the term. I first learned about the term from Eric Ries on his blog around 2008, I think. Later on his book Lean Startup, I think he popularized this term a lot. But research on it, I saw there was an article from William Junk from 2000. That was the first reference I got on the term MVP. In fact, on his original article was about project management, time, scope, and everything. And there was a graph there, and he would show a very small, quadrant saying this is the MVP of the whole project. Of course, later we changed. MVP is much more about product than project. But for me, this was where I saw the term from. But important to say, much more than the acronym, what I really like from the movement on Lean Startup is the way of thinking, build, measure, learn. Whatever we call that thing, that I call MVP, MSP, MLP, whatever, the build, measure, learn for me is the most important part. The way of working, not necessarily the acronym itself. Fabio, what about you? Because I know Fabio's more of a product person. I have my vicious on Inception, so I really like MVP and this kind of stuff. But Fabio thinks more has more product experience, not only on the beginning, to the overall cycle. Well, what's your take on MVP?
Yeah, not only that, but I was also a project manager before I was a product manager, so I lived on the other side as well. There's one thing that we have to take into consideration regarding the history of why suddenly MVP or minimum product became a thing, which is the internet. Before the internet, you needed to sell software through a store, and it would be off-the-shelf software. You couldn't patch it, you couldn't update it, and sometimes people would sell the updates, which was super frustrating for the people that were already using a software. Microsoft could get away with selling a few one new version of Windows every, I don't know, few years, but not a lot of people could keep selling the same software over and over again because they improved it. So when the internet came and people started realizing that you can actually pretty much automatically distribute, patches and updates. It changed completely the way that we looked at building software. So before that, we needed to build a very good software because you're gonna sell that after, in some store, and that would be the end of it. Now I can improve the software infinitely, right? I can just distribute new code, and especially, and that became like super accelerated when the application went to the browser, when we stopped selling, a different interface, and you just open the application in Chrome. And now the application is not even on the client anymore. They're not even buying anything. They just buy access, and the application is actually on your server, so you can update it times a day if you want to. And it's important to state those obvious things because people don't realize that should bring a change in mentality about how we approach software, because the architecture is so different now. And so I was there building projects where I would have to deliver a completed piece of software, and I know how my life was. It was, if the project would take a year, maybe 5 to 6 months would be just documentation, just discussion of scope. Like, okay, but in this screen, how is that button gonna look like? Oh no, I wish the button was larger. And everything needed to be pre-documented because when those documents went to engineering, we would criticize based on the documentation, right? Oh, engineer didn't deliver because the button was supposed to be yellow and large and blah blah blah. So because everybody understood that the document would be the arbiter of if the delivery was good or not, people would scope like endlessly. It was really, really painful. All of the discussions on every single detail of every single screen. And there was this tendency, because nothing is getting done and everything is only theoretical, that you just keep adding features, right? Oh, and I have another idea. And well, it's just a piece of paper. You can just write down another idea and just tell whoever is doing the project to put that feature in. So sorry about the long intro, but I really believe that this has to be the basis for our discussion. Um, and then what happens in the future of that product? Pareto's law. Around 20% of the features will be 80% of the product usefulness, if you will, and 80% of the features will hardly get used at all, nor understood by our general audience. Oh, I know, but there is one edge case that I needed this functionality here, and now we start thinking about MVP. Well, you might wait and put that edge case, later, address that later. You don't need to launch the product with every single edge case already mapped, and try to cater to every single individual that will ever use your product. You can kind of think of which market you want to get to, what are the problems that you're trying to solve, and try to solve those. See if you're actually solving anything before you jump into the rest of the 80% of useless features that you end up putting there. I know that the CEOs will push, the investors will push. There's gonna be push for a lot of useless functionalities, but make sure that you start with the best ones, because you can update in a flash. You can update every single day. It's not a problem to go to market with an incomplete product, and that's very, very powerful and very scary. I know companies right now in 2025 that cannot get used to that mindset at all. They're still worried about launching an incomplete thing. So, and also they end up calling in that process, without understanding exactly that, um, they end up calling MVP a kind of a bare bones shitty version. And that wasn't really to be the case. Like, the MVP should be, oh, here's the very core functionalities and features that will actually start solving a problem for our ICP, our ideal customer profile for the audience that we want to target. There's no edge cases here. There's still not a lot of details on some processes that were fuzzy, but we want to know that we're in the right path. Let's launch, this basic functionalities. Let's see how people feel while using them, and we can always update. Actually, updating is should be in everyone's plans, right? Just keep in mind you will keep updating. There is no one version 1.0, 2.0, 3.0. That's also an inheritance from the days before the internet. Right now, there are many of the popular products out there. There are hundreds of deploys a week. So there's not even like number versions, anything like that. You're gonna keep updating, but just make sure that you're on the right path, and that's the whole. Now we get to the MVP, which is something that will keep risk to a minimum because we're testing if we are on the right path.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. I even heard that iFood, which is one of the biggest tech companies here in Brazil, it's a sort of a grub hub for Brazil. And I heard recently that they do like 600 deploys a day. 600 deploys a day. So yeah, constantly testing new things, experimenting, putting new things. I even talked in another episode about that famous Reid Hoffman phrase: "If you're not embarrassed by your first version, that's probably because you launched too late." So that's the main thing that we need to keep in mind. And one question that I get, especially from big companies, about this embarrassment is that, oh, I'm a big company, I have big clients, I cannot be embarrassed with my whole base. When talking to big clients, they don't normally have this, they are afraid, they are concerned of being embarrassed in front of a lot of clients. They normally have big clients. So what I normally advise them is that you don't need to test your MVP with all of your clients at the same time. You don't need to be embarrassed with all of your clients at the same time. You can use the alpha, beta, and go live stages. So the alpha is just a handful of customers. Normally they are customers that you are very close to. You have a good relationship with them. They are willing to test new things. And you need them to be very close because you're probably going to have a very embarrassing first version that even will break, even will not generate the expected results. So you need very close clients in order to do that. A handful, like 3, 4, 5 at max. And then you go to the beta phase. The beta phase, you fix the things in your product that is not working. So you are good in terms of what you promise to deliver. You are fulfilling the expectations, but probably the experience can be improved a lot. So this is the beta phase, and then when you solve the experience, you use the go live. So you can use this phase, the stages, in order to be embarrassed, but have all the benefits of the MVP, which is receiving feedback from your user, not building a too complicated product that no one will use, like 80% of the features, reducing uncertainty. This is very important as well, because the bigger the chunk of work, the bigger the uncertainty of what you need to do. And the fourth one, I normally talk about this in my talks, is the return on investment. You reduce the curve of the return on investment. So this is normally what I advise my clients to think about when they think about MVPs.
Joca, you're talking about MVP in the context of new products, beta users, early adopters kind of stuff. But we use the same concept for existing products. Like I worked for ThoughtWorks for several years, and several of the inception I was at was platform teams or teams rebuilding something that's already working, a second version or replacing some legacy system. And the MVP also work. Even when you have a large user base of your current product, you got to think about, okay, what about the new version, the new system? So you don't open it to everybody. It's not like, oh, let's make an improvement and then put in the world for these 1 million users, clients we have. No, then you do like the A/B testing. You improve the new stuff. Let's say you change the interface, but behind the scenes, one of the components you improve, and then you target 1,000 users, new interface, with the old component. Other 1,000 users, new interface with the new component, and then you compare the results. If the results are better with the new component, great. Then go expand it to your whole user base. You're using the same concept: build, measure, learn, for existing product, not necessarily a new product. It's the same concept. It's MVP, build, measure, learn. Small increments, small validated hypothesis. Increments. Same concept, not only for new product.
Commenting on that, I think people would be surprised how open the clients actually are to test things for us. It all depends on how you frame it. So many times I did exactly what Joca said. I'd go to the clients that I felt closer to me, that we had more rapport for some reason. They were easier to work with. They wouldn't be part of my French hassle. So we like to work with each other. There's always a client, a few clients that are like this, and I would offer them as a privilege, like, oh, I'm actually testing something that I believe that you're gonna like because it's gonna solve this and that problem that you have. Um, are you willing to be a pioneer here? Can I actually offer the privilege of you testing that first? They usually feel that it's a privilege. They're usually very enthusiastic, like, oh, sure, please send this thing my way because I really want to solve this problem. And usually I say, okay, all I ask in return is that I interview your users or you about the thing that I'm going to launch, and I'll be getting your impressions. That's all I ask. Usually for them, it's great. They feel very excited to test that.
It's not like that they're testing a new car or a new medical device. We're talking about things that are testable. You know.
Yeah. That's. Yeah, you normally have some clients that are they are the not the early adopters, but the innovators in the adoption curve of technology adoption curve. They are the innovators, that the ones that really want to play with new technologies, new solutions, new products. It's good to have some of those and have them identified in your user base. And you know what? I was searching around. You mentioned about features. It's not only about the whole product, but only features or pieces of the product. One of the names, but it didn't catch as the MVP. One of the names of this was MMF. I don't know if you know about this. Minimal marketable feature.
Features. Yeah.
Yes. It's prior to MVP, but the same concept.
Same
Quite
concept.
interesting. Yeah.
In fact, minimal lovable, sorry, the one you wrote, sellable. For me, it's very similar concept. It's just about what is that person or that group of people deciding on that thing.
Yeah. But don't you think that the viable is too broad of a term? I mean, viable for me is one thing, for Paulo is another, for Fabio is another.
But that's the thing. I would say that the way that I think about this is that we're talking a lot about validating the solution, but that's not really what we are doing, right? We're trying to validate the problem, and this is something that's very easy to forget, and very important to remember, because we think we know the problem, but so many times in my career, and I believe you guys have been through that. I thought I knew the problem. I built a solution. I spent a couple of months building something. When I put the solution in front of the client will look at, no, that's not quite it. And then I realized, okay. Didn't you say this and that? No, I never said that. You can keep debating if they ask for that or not, but I would just like, oh, I misunderstood them. Maybe it wasn't my fault, but I
Fabio,
don't care. I want to solve the problem.
my apologies, but I'm gonna politely disagree. No, not disagree. First, some context. I was a consultant for 20 years, right? And then second context, I used to be a developer, so I'm closer to delivery. When I listen to you, and I totally agree, first we should validate and make sure we understand the problem, right? But you have two, it's not even two sides of the same coin. In fact, Joca wrote an article about this, and I think Mark Kagan as well. You have problem discovery and solution discovery. And you're able to use the term MVP in both sides. First thing is like, don't go to solution discovery before figuring out problem discovery. So if you're talking about MVP on that side of the problem discovery, 100% agree. But when you go to solutioning, you also use the same build, measure, launch, validate,
Yeah.
you know, and then you might use MVP for solution discovery as well, you know, and that's the confusion that the term goes on the web, because when someone look at MVP and they are closer to delivery, they might say, oh, MVP about the thing I'm building. And someone look at the term MVP and they're more on the discovery side, UX research, they're like, no, MVP to figure out that's the problem with the term, you know.
Yeah.
So I'm less concerned about the term and more about the group that got to make a decision, get together and figure out, okay, what do we want? You know, not what is the name of the thing, MVP, experiment, MLP, whatever, but what do we want? I think this is the most important thing. And to answer
That's very well
Joca,
put. I don't think we disagree. You know, I was talking
no,
actually about MVP in the problem space. So yeah.
on the problem, yeah. The disagreement here is like, I also use the word MVP on the solution in
On the
discovery.
solution space. No, that's
Yeah.
fine.
On the solution space. But that's the danger of using the same term in several places. So
Yeah.
what I try to do is not use the term and get the group to decide, okay, what is that minimum thing, you know, we are doing to validate this?
But maybe
Or
my point here is, which is something that maybe that's my background in small startups, that you don't have like a lot of budget or time, to make like very sophisticated process. You have to validate things very fast, So it's again talking about lean startup. You want to fail fast. If you're going to fail, you want to discover that failure very very early, and not late. So what I did a lot was actually validating the problem, already showing a possible solution.
yeah,
So
I
that's
totally
tricky.
agree.
Yeah, it's tricky because you might be, maybe you're not validating the problem itself. Maybe they don't like the solution. But I would say, I would submit to you guys that you can kind of know the difference depending on how the customer responds to the solution that you present. You can figure out if they're actually saying, that's not a problem I have, the solution has nothing to do with my life, or rather they're saying, it's, yeah, I can see where you're going, but I don't like to use this kind of feature to solve that problem. So I can't give any examples, but from the top of my mind, I've been in both sides, and I mean to both situations, and you can kind of figure it out. Like, and so what I did a lot was using the MVP already, something done, but actually to use that to ask about the problem. And if you can build cheaply and fast, I would say that that's a lot better than interviewing the clients.
I agree.
Yeah,
100%.
yeah, totally agree. When you present something real or close to real to a user, the feedback will be much greater. But one thing that I've noticed with the word viable is even in small startups, like the CEO or the founder, she has a completely different understanding what viable is compared to what you're trying to build. For her, it may be something way bigger. Oh, it's impossible to have a product without this and this and this. And you need to convince her somehow that I understand, but we need to give one step at a time. We need to test first one thing, then the other thing. How do we do this in a day-to-day situation? Because this is not unusual. I mean, you also have been helping clients to build their digital products, and this is not an uncommon situation. How do we manage this? How do we convince the leaders that maybe we don't need all of that in order to test either a problem or a solution? How do we do that?
You wait for the last month of project when all the deadlines are getting busted, and you start cutting scope. Then they agree.
We're running out of money. We gotta cut stuff.
Exactly.
So boom,
That's the that's the
there's
way to do it.
MVP. Well, I live in the Silicon Valley and I've been in 7 startups in 6 years. Unfortunately, all of them went down, and it was always the same story. We're running out of money. That's it. That's our MVP. With a really bad situation. Well, with Leanception, I'll tell here the story of Leanception, right? But then I was working for ThoughtWorks for other organizations, some smaller, majority of them bigger. Mine
Sorry,
was,
Carol, just
yeah,
to make sure that everybody understands, I was joking. So yeah, but go ahead.
I was not joking. I've been in startups,
No,
and
no,
the word MVP
no,
comes
no,
at the end when like we're running short of money. This gotta be out the door, you know. And
no,
then
but
we
but
call this the MVP, which is pretty bad, you know.
but
But
I'm
those are,
just being mindful of the audiences that don't know the cynical Rio de Janeiro
yeah.
sense of humor. So yeah, uh,
I hope by the accent they get there's something different with those three folks here.
exactly.
But I'll tell you the story of Inception because I'm really good facilitator and I was helping the beginning of projects, agile projects, whatever you want to call it, the Inceptions, right? And then I felt in love with MVP, especially because of my past of failed startups when I started careers with he said, basically was saying, hey, there is a process where we can make startups successful. Don't waste your money and effort to build it the wrong thing. I was like, damn it, why this book was not there 8 years ago? Don't know. But then I brought this to large organizations. And the challenge I had, in fact, I translated the book Enterprise to Portuguese from English to Portuguese. And we all agreed, we got to understand the big picture and we got to validate the hypothesis fast. We need to align on the MVP. We need to be fast on it. When I try to get any group of people, being startups or large corporation, in less than 1 day to, okay, what problem do you want to solve? What's the hypothesis? What's the MVP? It was super difficult, especially when you got to what's the MVP. It's a big fight in the room. If you ask only one person, it's easy. The person will decide, from my perspective, that's the MVP. When you put two people in the room and make the same questions, really difficult. That's when uh, it's not that I came up with the inception. After trying to answer that questions in several different ways, I realized that I could only make this question after a few days or on a workshop after you look from the perspective of the business, what the business considers it's really important, answering the term viability from the business perspective. And then you look from the perspective of the user, their journeys, the personas, whatever, right? And then you look from the perspective of the engineers. Let each one look from a different perspective. Only after each one of these uh, kind of people, business, user, desirability, and the engineering side talk about their perspective without deciding what is the MVP, and then you ask, okay, now I don't even ask exactly what is the MVP. First, ask in which order should go about, building this thing here, and then you ask, but where is the very first step? There we can validate, meaning where is the MVP, and then I fill up an MVP canvas. But I could only do this after a few other activities first. When I tried to do this like really fast in a few hours, I was never able to. In a group of people, by myself or only one person, only one perspective, easy. You know, several perspectives, which is usually the case on large organizations. That's a not a easy one.
But if I can be a product guy here, I would say that viable, it has to do with that's the way that I read the word viable. Okay, it's a viable solution to the user's problem. So it means that that product already understands what the user is trying to solve, and it's one of the viable solutions because once you validate the problem, yeah, you have like millions of different solutions that you can try, and some of those solutions will open a market, some of those solutions won't. Um, but when we say viable, that's how I read it. Okay, does this already start solving the user's problem? If it does, it's minimum, it's great. If it still doesn't, put more features in until it does. Um, and don't put any bells and whistles after that point of, oh, it started solving the problem. So I don't know if the client needs to search for something and find it. Once you put a basic search that finds for every record that you have in a database, yeah, you started solving the problem already. Oh, but I want to filter, I want to sort, I want to make a AI enhanced algorithm. Yeah, those are still on top of searching and finding something. So those would be already more than viable. Those would be specific solutions depending on the client, blah, blah, blah. But make the search work first and put that in front of the client, because maybe the client is not is going to tell you, but you know, I don't want to search for this. I wanted that to be automatic somehow, and then you realize that you thought that he wanted to search for something, but actually he doesn't.
That's that's a good point. But one thing that I've been thinking about and talking with my clients lately is that even the problem discovery has two sides, and we tend normally the product people in general, me included, tend to focus more on the user problem, the client problem. So we need to solve a problem to the client. But actually, it has two sides. It has the user or the client problem, but it has also the company problem. The company wants to achieve something with that feature, with that product. And we need to think on both sides, not only, okay, am I solving a problem to our client, but am I generating any type of result, or am I hitting the strategic objectives that the company has for my product? I believe we need to take this into consideration as well.
I would add the third side is the feasibility of building it, right?
Yeah, yeah,
There is an engineering side, whatever you're doing, right? I don't know what it is, but there is an engineering side of it that someone needs to make the minimum that's feasible to help the user and your clients and generate something for the business. Not the whole thing, because I know engineers sometimes we go a little overboard. Do the minimum, but not less than the minimum, because if the things scale really fast, it cannot break. So the engineering side is not easy as well.
yep, yeah.
A
And
lot-
engineering, they normally enter on the solution discovery. I was talking more about
yes,
the problem discovery. Yeah, yeah.
But you know, I would submit something here, and that's a more radical point of view. But you know, that's the beauty of having podcasts. We can discuss those ideas freely. But it is also something that I've experienced. The more I thought about this during my career, the more I realized that there is a certain priority for those things. You cannot build a business if you're not solving the client's problem, right? It has to be the first thing. It's impossible for you to sell anything that's not a solution. Just it won't sell. You can't. So and I know it's kind of obvious when you guys are saying, yeah, you have to take into consideration other that you're building a business around it. You have to pay everybody's salaries, sure, but I've seen it time and again, and more times than I wanted. Companies that have it the other way around, and they say, "Oh, when building the product, you have to take into consideration the company strategy." There's no company strategy if the users don't like your product. You won't have anything. So, so the company strategy should be something. Users get happy. Like users have to be at the center of the company strategy, or else you don't have a company. So, and that's a product mindset. Of course, I'm talking about companies that are built around the product, right? So this product, it has the first thing that you need to make 100% sure is that is a viable solution to somebody's problem, and it solves in such a good way that they will be willing to give you some money for it, and that's the whole beginning of the business. And also for feasibility, that priority would still be the same, because oh, I can't build this. I want to go from point A to point B. Let's build a teleport. Yeah, engineering can always say, we don't have the physics yet to build a teleport, but you know what? We, we know code, and we can build a code that will show the user some pictures of the place that he wanted to go to. Yeah, that's feasible, but that doesn't solve the problem at all, and the users will reject it right away. I know it sounds like a dumb example, but again, that's inspired by some real life discussions that I remember, and traumatized me a little bit. That the companies they end up looking at their own belly buttons and just discussing what they can do and they want to do, and they and stop discussing what the clients actually want. And in some of those discussions, when I would be the annoying guy in the room, like, oh, what about the user? And I heard in more than one place, oh, the users don't know shit. They don't know what they want. And I was
Well,
like,
Steve
I
Jobs
think
used
you
to say
should
this,
quit.
huh?
What? What?
In theory, Steve Jobs said this when he was creating the iPhone. In
No,
theory.
no,
And
no, no,
Harry
no,
Ford
no.
as well. And
No,
Harry
he
Ford as
said
well.
you shouldn't ask for the solution, the specific solution. But he was very much a guy in that could have a lot of empathy for the user. He
Yeah, yeah,
realized
I know,
that
I
the
know, I
cell
know, I
phone
know.
was a cumbersome, weird piece of brick, and he understood that he could make a lot better. But I would say that Steve Jobs, and it's great to touch on that point, because some people actually might read Steve Jobs as, oh, if you're a genius you can always like have the best solution and you don't need to ask the clients. I would say that Steve Jobs would first, he was a very much client or user oriented guy. He could understand all the drawbacks, in a cell phone experience, choosing music experience and things like that. He could project himself very well into those spaces or those target audiences. And second, yeah, he was a genius. So if you have a resident genius in your company, by all means, listen to him. I don't have anything to say. I didn't have the pleasure yet, okay, of having like geniuses around me. All I had was very smart guys, but not geniuses. So it's better to use methodology instead of just, that creator, genius creator mindset.
And to add to that, what I normally talk about when I talk about this specific phrase, not only Steve Jobs but Henry Ford also use this. If I listen to the clients, I would build a
Faster
uh,
horse.
yes, exactly, or put more horses to the chariot. So yeah, but the thing is, the user, they sometimes think they know the solution
Yeah,
and they want to
but
tell you the solution, and that's what you need to go around.
Yep,
And because there is one thing that the user knows a lot is about the problem that they have,
exactly.
the motivation that they have to solve this problem, and why this problem is so important to them. If we are able to understand this is crucial for us. This is critical for us to build the right product. A good understanding of the problem, and no one better than the user to tell you about the problem. He is the best person to
He's an
tell you about.
expert in his own life.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And he is an expert not only about the problem, but the context where the problem happens and the motivation that he has to solve this problem. Those three is very, very, very important for you to create the right product. So yeah, the user knows. The user knows. They normally think they know the solution and they will give you a suggestion of a solution, and you need to be able to go pass through the solution suggestion and then understand the problem, the context where the problem happens, and the motivation that they have to solve the problem.
No, that's a great way to put it. It's one of my mottos when I talk to my teams. Like, yeah, the user is an expert on his own problems, on their own problems, and we have to be the experts in solutions.
There you go.
We built several digital products already. He didn't, or she didn't, or they didn't. They don't know. Usually, they won't know the solution. But so that discussion is going to a great place
yeah,
actually. That we're
expert solutions. But one thing, in fact, I saw this in a Brazilian conference last year. A lot of people complain about the large discoveries. We gotta be careful because we gotta do the minimum discovery to figure out stuff, and we come up with a plan for MVP, but we don't know if that plan is amazing or not. But then you put in the hands of the user, and then to get the learning, it is a continuous process. That's why I really like the term continuous discovery instead of like being being phased. And this will be continuous forever. I don't care if you keep on using the term MVP or not, but that's continuous. As long as you have a product, you always be learning and doing stuff and validating.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
no,
Totally,
definitely.
totally.
I like to repeat to especially to designers, that get overexcited about, oh, let's do a discovery, and they're thinking about this whole project for something like that. I usually say, well, the best discovery possible is putting something up out there in the market.
Yeah. Yeah. And keep
The best
discovering.
discovery is delivery. The best discovery
Yeah.
is delivery.
Exactly. Yeah. Of course,
Yeah,
I measure everything, right? We have to
sure,
put the metrics because some
sure.
people they just launch and never measure anything. Then you're not discovering anything. But But I'm talking about, yeah, measure everything, have the numbers. Do you know where they clicked? Do you know where they're churning, when they're churning, why they're churning? Do some qualitative reports as well, interview people. Yeah, but the continuous discovery is something that really works. Prototyping and interviewing people before something is out there, it does not work.
Yeah, yeah, totally, totally. We are getting to the around 35 to 40 minutes, so we are getting to close. But let me ask you, what motivated you to create this new product, the Lean Factory? What is it, and what is the motivation behind it?
Leanfactory.app. Well,
There you go. There you go.
let's tell the story. We know each other for a long time, right? I'm a I'm a fan of both of you, right? And I'm very well known from the Leanception, and I've been running Leanception from 2012, 2014, 15. I have a Then I called Leanception. I have a bunch of pictures of Leanceptions and a lot of mural boards and mural boards. And when when GPT became really famous, I besides create some prompt, I decided let me try and create one GPT. And then I called Fab. I'm like, hey Fab, what do you think about this? And said, oh, this is amazing. And then we create what we call chat MVP.ai, an MVP in itself. And I put the link on two of my posts on MVP that I have on my website. And a lot of people start using it. Basically, they would put their MVP idea, I would receive it, and then I would put this on the GPT I was training. I trained that GPT with 100 plus results of the inceptions I run, MVP canvas from organizations that, of course, I removed their names. And after running it for a few months, suddenly the responses were amazing. At the beginning I was like, no, this is not really an MVP. Come on, today we have low code or no code tools. What, MVP in 3 months? Are you crazy, GPT? I would fight with the GPT, like, don't talk about money, it's not your job to figure out how much the person's gonna... But then the results were really amazing. And what happened, like, I would send an email to the person with the question. Some of those people replied like, hey, can you help me? Then I called Fab. I'm like, hey Fab, some people are interested on getting help on this. And of course, we are using AI tools. Fab is a really good product guy. And we got some of those and they really like it. And we decided, guess what? We have something here. Then Fabio came up with the name. This is a Lean Factory. And then we created, we're being still a little quiet about this because we're super busy with a bunch of stuff and we want to make sure, the clients we get, we treated them really well. But so far, so good. Clients are very happy, and we're helping them with turning their ideas into something testable, MVP, in really fast, and then look at the data after that, right? And we support them.
Yeah, the
Fabio,
whole
what's yours? I want to hear your story on Lean Factory.
That's the thing, we're both computer engineers, so we both are very uh, comfortable with the idea that code has zero value. I would say it's what you build with the code that has value, right? And so many startups they end up getting entangled, in code, in building, and and since my the college days, and actually Paulo is a master in computer engineering. I stopped at bachelor, but still, what we learn over there is that, the language is gonna become higher and higher level until eventually it's gonna get to natural level. Programming is not supposed to be code speak. It's not supposed to be a privilege of a handful of people that they know how to code, and that's an amazing knowledge. Uh, Coding uh, needed to, well, actually had this calling of getting more and more simple. And we graduated in the 90s, and it's already 30 years now. And now finally, that promise is coming true. But I always thought like this, like, yeah, code has no value at all. And I went to work for several very big companies, companies that you guys use every day over there, all over the world. And I could see their codes, under the hood. I could see what's inside. and it's horrible usually, like it's spaghetti code. It's the architects are getting crazy, nobody's happy, the developers are grumpy, they feel that the code is awful, but nobody will refactor because millions of dollars are going for there, and there's the risk is just too high for you to do a complete refactoring. And so everybody's struggling with that, like the value of a company is not in the code. Like the code is usually kind of crappy, almost very successful companies. Um, so the whole point is, what if we just dump, the importance of code and just help people build something that's gonna solve the problem, and it doesn't matter how. And of course, no, you can use Lovable, Cursor, Windsurf, V0, whatnot, Bolt, whatever, um, because we're not delivering the code. We're not a software factory. We're actually delivering something that can be testable, and we can put that in the market. And we don't have like a developer with us, right? It's just us using AI, and I don't mind like revealing that, because the real thing that we are selling is sitting down with the client, understanding what exactly he wants to solve, like what kind of market he's looking at, and how we can suggest something that's going to be minimum and sellable, viable, lovable. You can use whatever you want, but something that actually solves the problem. That starts like getting their feet wet in that water, and that will make them maybe even earn some money. Now,
Yeah.
Paulo knows that one of
Yeah.
our clients, we actually have Stripe over there, like integrated, and they are selling.
Yeah. It's amazing.
So they want to know if it's going to sell or not. And of
Yeah.
course, it can be way more sophisticated than what's there. But what's
But
there is sellable. We're
the,
sure that it's completely sellable.
do you know what, Fabio? One thing I realized today,
Uh-huh.
2025, the humans in technology, including us, but us not, because I'm from MVP Leanception from more than 10 years, right? So I'm always focused on do less, what's the minimum, or you're validating, you as well. But all the technical people that I know, they always talk about and this, and we can do this. What about this? What about if it's scale? The human beings are adding to the problem, especially
Yeah.
consultancies, because they're like, no, and I can do more, right? But
Exactly.
nowadays, when you go to GPTs and AI tools, they do the same thing, you know?
Yeah.
They're like, oh no, what about this? Do you want me to give you more
Yeah.
features and a better plan? And I
Yeah.
know this because we use those tools, and I'm like, no, damn it, like, it's MVP, it's less. So every
We're
single
going.
client we have and every single tool we've been using, the tools are like, oh, I can also build this interface for this and this and that, and I can integrate the flow with this. To the tool, I'm like, no. And to the human beings, it's the same thing. I'm like, no. You want to validate is the MVP. So nowadays, I think it's become even more important the decision on what to build, or even more, what not to build, because all the AI tools and all the human beings, they're saying more, because now we can. It's faster to build. So I
Yeah.
think current moment in the software industry history, we have a danger of creating a lot of crap stuff.
But Paulo, it's gonna be history repeating itself, because the first dot-com bubble was it's one way to interpret it was already that, CEOs that had ideas, they would gather like a co-founder CTO, they would build a lot of code and then understand, oh, there's zero market for this. Oh, so we're still in the same, it's a mindset thing and not really a code thing. So actually people say, oh, the revolution of AI. I'm like, not in the sense of maybe AI is going to revolutionize other markets, maybe it's going to be more disruptive, but I would say that AI is not revolutionizing code building or anything like that. It's just making it more simple, but that was always the direction that it was going. It didn't change anything. But it's going to, like you said, it's going to demand that people understand that building was never the problem. It's deciding what to build that is where's the real money is.
Yeah, you know what? One thing that connected with what Paulo mentioned, it's always possible to build more and more and more. And there is one very simple tactic that I like to use is time frame. You put a time frame. So what can we build in 1 week, or what can we build nowadays in 1 day? right? What can we build and ship in one day? And then you have to figure out the minimum of the minimum of the minimum that you'll be able to deliver some value in one day or in 1 week. To tell a fun story, when I wrote my first book was called Startup Guide, and it was the first book of on a startup, a publishing house that was a startup back then called Casa do Código, House of Code in English, that came from a teaching a school, a programming school, and they were launching a publishing house, and they were following what I've been doing in terms of MVP back then. And the MVP that I did is very close to what you are doing with Lean Factory. I used some friends that were launching a build your idea in 1 week, and I had an idea, and I asked them to build it, and they came back to me and said it's only 1 week. It will not fit everything that you want to do, so you're probably gonna need to cut this and cut this. So they helped me cut things in order to be able to build what I wanted to build in 1 week. And in Startup Guide, I tell the story of building this. It was a calorie counter. It was a calorie counter that I built back in 2011, 2010, 2011, something around that. So yeah, but I believe that time frame is a good tool, is a good tactic for you to be able to build something in a short period of time, having in mind that you need to solve some problem of your user that the user values.
No, that's a good one because it's over there in our website. You know that it's 30 days maximum. We launch something, and for one of the clients, I remember that it took us like 2 days to build the first prototype, and it was already fully functional. And the first thing that we showed the client was never like I don't know a layout or anything like that. It was like okay, it's done, and for them, they think that it took like a week to build, and it's not even a week. You know, it was like a couple of days. And of course, they had lots of comments, and it's so much easier, you know, to work when they see things working already, and they can comment on what's working, because suddenly all of the fluff and crazy ideas, they 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 start censoring themselves. You know, they won't give as many ideas anymore because they say, oh wow, it's kind of 90% done. So the more I say here, the more I'm going to delay the launch. So they immediately understand that okay, let's keep moving very fast because I like what I'm seeing already. So you know, yeah, fix this, and launch. Boom. So it's so much better when you work with something that's already working, you
Yeah.
know, and use that for discovery, if you will, than designing, you know, approving design and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And we are not, and we don't want to be a software factory. We don't want to have those clients
Yeah.
with us, like building more and more software. Like,
Yep.
it's lean. It's a lean factory. It's very cheap. It's only $5,000. Like, when I go and facilitate in Cyprus, it's much more expensive for a large organization. It's only 5,000 for his time, for my time, you know. So it's lean, you know. I'll make sure it is a plan for MVP first, because we're not going to build the whole thing for you. It got to be
No.
MVP, but we want you to validate your idea really fast.
Yeah.
And that's it. And I'm going to be honest. A lot of the validations that we get are like, oh, it's not exactly what I thought. Oh, I thought I would have 1,000 users in a week. I only had 5.
Yeah.
Yeah, congratulations. You only spent $5,000 instead of like
Exactly.
$100,000 to figure this out. You know.
And a lot of people will spend hundreds of thousands of dollars, you know, and then understand, oh, we built the wrong thing.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, with those words of wisdom, I believe we are closing our episode. We are more than 45 minutes long, so but we had a very good conversation, and please send us your next ideas. What you want us to talk about? This one was on MVP, and what would be the next topic you want the three of us to discuss? So thank you, Paulo. Thank you, Fabio.
Thank you so much.
Awesome.
It's a
Thank
pleasure
you,
to be
Joca.
here.
Thank you, Fabio. Yeah, and I hope everybody enjoy our Brazilian accent.
See you next time.
See you.